name is Matthew Larson, and I am Montana Pediatrics Diabetes Program Manager. I'm a dietitian, certified diabetes care and education specialist by trade, and I'm super excited to be able to welcome DiSH Montana to everyone here today. And so a couple things that we'll keep kind of our intro a little short as we really move towards the obviously the open forum, but the incredible information that we're going to receive from Catherine here as well today. So as again, apologize, I'm going to read through a few of Dr. Pollack's slides here. I might be reading them a little bit because they were not mine. So bear with us. We promise we'll get this up and running here. But DiSH, just an overview of what DiSH is for those who haven't had the background information or still looking for more. It's a monthly school diabetes health and teleconferencing program designed by school nurses and personnel statewide and personnel for statewide colleagues who are also care for students with diabetes. The program is well established in Wisconsin and Washington, and we're super excited to be able to bring it over to Montana for our first session here this evening. And part of the partnership is obviously with Montana Pediatrics, and we're a collaborative Montana-based group of providers who have come together to really increase access to healthcare and equity for kids across the state. And we do a variety of work from after hours care work to chronic care management to some of the work on Fort Peck. But we're super excited to have connected with the Helmsley Charitable Trust in 2021, which has allowed us to focus on support with children with type 1 diabetes, their families, and those who assist in their care. So a few things here again. DiSH is inspired by Project Echo, and I'm not sure how much everyone is familiar with that, but a big piece is going to be, there's going to be a presentation, didactic portion of this presentation, and then we're going to have the second session, which is going to be hopefully open dialogue. We really encourage everyone to be able to speak up and chime in, ask questions. Don't hesitate. If you don't want to speak up on audio, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. And just kind of a reminder, we'll hit it later, but first session with Catherine Baran and her presentation will be recorded for later. The second session, when we're doing case study and discussion, it will not be recorded. All right, so a couple things really important. This is not a webinar, so we really want people obviously to sit back and garnish the information that we're going to first present, but then we really do ask for all the participants to be engaged, learn from others, share experiences. Try to keep private health information out of it, but feel free to bring up certain situations and cases that you're working with in the schools.
Thanks, Matt. Can you guys hear?
Gotcha. Yep.
Awesome. I switched over to my phone. I apologize for the technical difficulties. And thank you for presenting the slides beautifully. You did a great job. So each DiSH session sort of follows a similar style to the Echo sessions, where the first part is the didactic presentation, like Matt suggested, and the second part is open discussion and dialogue, where we share ideas and learn from each other. So we hope that you are learning from each other across the state. We are learning from you, and we are learning from each other. It's sort of every directional learning. And following that, we'll have a survey to see how this session went to keep making this better each time. And you'll get an email as a follow-up with sort of the highlights from that discussion, that since it won't be archived, we want to make sure you can still get some key points to take away and share. Please keep in mind during that discussion portion that the DiSH presentations and discussions do not create or otherwise establish a provider-patient relationship between any clinician and any patient or student whose case is being presented and discussed during a DiSH setting. When discussing any student or patient, please omit any personal identifiers, their home, their birth date, their name. Please consider whether you should withhold certain geographic or other data specific to a student or school that would constitute information protected by FERPA or HIPAA. And we'll try to remind you of that when we get to the discussion portion.
And I would like to just kind of Sorry
No,
there,
go ahead.
jump in on you. I'd just like to kind of take a quick moment to say thank you to all those who have helped make DiSH Montana possible, and starting off with Dr. Allison Pollock right there. This slide here kind of shows the 10 individuals that have been at kind of the core of getting DiSH off the ground here in Montana. But as the saying goes, it takes community. So I'll jump over to slide 2 here as well. But what you'll see, and the great thing about all of this is we're very excited to have such a diverse group of physicians, diabetes educators, school nurses, social workers, therapists, dietitians, and more to help support and drive the work that we're doing here. And especially, again, we want to give thanks to the Leona M. and Harry B. Helmsley Charitable Trust for helping make all this work come together for us in Montana. And with that, thank you everyone for kind of bearing with us and getting us rolling here. It's a great honor to really introduce Dr. Nathan Bingham, who's actually going to be the one to introduce our speaker here today. And I just wanted to, for those who know or don't know Dr. Bingham, I do want to give just a little quick background. Dr. Bingham's been with the Pediatric Endocrinology and Logan Health since August 2020. He's completed his residency in pediatrics, followed by a fellowship in pediatric endocrinology at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And prior to moving to Montana, he spent 7 years as a faculty at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And I just want to give, and last but not least, a shout out. He's been instrumental in kind of jump-starting a school nurse diabetes education day over the last couple of years. So thank you, Dr. Bingham, and on to you.
Thanks, Matt. Everybody hear me okay? Volume's okay?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Hopefully some of you participated with us on our school education day. We thought that was a great opportunity. It's been a goal of mine to interact with school nurses since I got here. I really feel like school nurses are kind of our front line for helping to treat some of these patients. You see these patients, nearly every day. So we appreciate your help in caring for them. So I cannot think really of a more apropos topic for our inaugural type discussion today to cover kind of technology topics with diabetes. And I can't think of a better person to cover those and lead our discussion today than Catherine Baran. She is a registered nurse and certified diabetes care and education specialist with really broad experience in diabetes care. She has worked as a diabetes educator for over 20 years. She specialized and has worked for several medical device companies, including Abbott, Smiths Medical, and Medtronic. Catherine has a strong passion for educating and supporting families with children with diabetes. And I think that passion is as much personal as professional. Catherine's son, Brendan, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a toddler, and I'm sure she can tell you what a difference developing diabetes technologies have made in her life and the life of her son. I know that she believes strongly in using education, support, and diabetes technologies to empower people living with diabetes to improve their lives, to improve their health and their quality of life. Catherine's an experienced and certified insulin pump and sensor trainer, and really the heart of our pediatric diabetes program here at Logan Health. I in particular feel very fortunate to have her here with us at Logan Health. When Catherine's not helping patients, she enjoys hiking, skiing, and traveling with her husband. So without further delay, I'll turn it over to you, Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bingham. I appreciate that. Well, I want to say I'm so excited to be the first presenter for DiSH Montana. So thank you. I feel so honored with that. I think today the change in how technology is evolving in the diabetes realm is just incredible. It's moving so rapidly. And so I really applaud all of the school nurses for keeping up with it, because sometimes even within our clinic, it's hard for me to keep up with it. So I'm hoping today to really just do a brief overview of kind of traditional pump therapy and CGM, just in case there are some folks out there that maybe aren't as familiar with the technology. But really what I'm going to be primarily focusing on is talking about our automated insulin delivery systems, and hopefully giving you some tips today that you can take back to school and implement things around exercise, around low blood sugars and high blood sugars, and how those might be a little bit different on these automated insulin delivery systems. So just to review what CGM is, or continuous glucose monitoring, it is a small sensor that's placed underneath the skin that's actually measuring glucose in the fat tissue. So the fluid, the interstitial fluid that's in the fat tissue, has glucose in it and is measuring that glucose every 5 minutes throughout the day. And these devices send that information over to some type of receiver. So it could be a standalone receiver, it might be a cell phone, or even an insulin pump. And these devices alert us when the blood sugar is too high or too low. And it actually gives us information about where we're trending. So when you see a glucose value, not only is it giving the glucose value, but it's also where you're headed. So when CGM came out, it was really the first time that people could be proactive in managing diabetes. They could see where they're going instead of just that single glucose value. And if the students are using a cell phone as the receiver, it actually can beam up to the cloud and allow caregivers that aren't with them currently to be able to see their data. And that can be really wonderful for parents. It gives them a lot of peace of mind, so that when kids are at school or they're at a friend's house, they might be able to actually see what's going on with their glucose values and know they'll get alerted. Right now, there's two CGM devices on the market that are approved for replacement of finger sticks, meaning that you can look at the glucose value on the sensor receiver and make a dosing decision off of that. How much insulin to give? Do I treat a low blood sugar? But I do think it's important to just point out that this is technology, and sometimes technology isn't perfect. So it is important that if the child's symptoms ever don't match with what the sensor's reading, that it's really important to go back to our gold standard, which is blood glucose monitoring. So whenever we're in doubt, I always tell our families, when in doubt, pull your meter out, check your blood sugar, and make sure that what the sensor is reading is accurate. And finally, I just want to point out that there are some substances that can interfere with these devices. So if a child's taking Tylenol or vitamin C, Tylenol can impact Dexcom. I will say though, these are pretty large doses of Tylenol, typically 1,000 milligrams or more, which really isn't a pediatric size dose. But if you have teenagers that are wearing these devices and they've been taking Tylenol to deal with a headache or a cold, it could actually falsely raise the blood sugar values on the sensor. So go back to finger sticks. Same thing with vitamin C. You've got a child that's sick and has been taking emergency, 500 milligrams or more could impact the reading. So just be aware. Okay, I just wanted to give kind of a little graph to show really the differences between blood glucose meter checking and continuous glucose monitoring. So with a blood glucose meter, it really is like a snapshot in time. We're getting a single moment. When we check that blood sugar, all we can see is where they're at that very second. But with our CGM data, we get to see it all. It's more like a motion picture. We're watching a whole movie about what's happening with our glucose values. And these CGMs, they are giving us 288 glucose values per day. It's pretty amazing what we get to see with that. So instead of just seeing the 4 or 5 blood sugar checks a day, we get to see what happens overnight. We get to see what happens after they eat, what happens after exercise, and we can really learn from those patterns. So I do have to say, continuous glucose monitoring really has been a game changer when managing diabetes. So I want to also review just kind of the basics of traditional pump therapy. Now, when I'm talking about traditional pump therapy, this is really that standalone insulin pump that isn't integrated with a CGM. So a traditional pump, all the pumps on the market are very small in design, and they are filled with rapid acting insulin only. I want you to kind of think about these like they're an external pancreas, because they work an awful lot like a healthy pancreas would normally put out insulin. They do kind of a drip, drip, drip throughout the day. to replace the background insulin that the pancreas should be putting out, which means that when you're on a pump, you no longer take those long-acting insulins like Lantus, Levemir, or Tresiba. And then that drip changes throughout the day. We can program those rates in. And then whenever it's time to eat or the blood sugar is high, we dial that into a smart calculator. And the smart calculator, we put in how many carbs we've eaten, what our blood sugar is, and it will calculate the dose for us down to a tiny, tiny dose, down to 0.025 sometimes. So very accurate dosing with these. And the other thing to know about the smart calculator is it actually also calculates the active insulin, meaning how much insulin is still in the body, bringing the blood sugar down. And it will take that into account and really prevent people from stacking their insulin and causing hypoglycemia later. So I just want to say, feel really confident that if you put a blood sugar in to a pump, that it's going to prevent you from bolusing too soon for a correction. And you may even find that they tell you, no, don't give any extra insulin, even when the blood sugar is high. And that's because it's taking into account what's functioning in the body. Now, CGM, the pumps can be used as standalone with a blood glucose meter, or they can be used in conjunction with CGMs. But it's really the difference between a traditional pump and an automated insulin delivery system is how that CGM functions. So once we kind of transition towards an automated insulin delivery system, that's where the magic happens between the CGM and the pump. So with AID systems, the CGM is actually beaming over that glucose value every 5 minutes throughout the day. And then the pump has an algorithm built into it that will actually take that glucose value. It'll look at the trend. So is the person dropping? Is the student rising? Are they staying steady? How much active insulin on board? And then they have some safety bumpers built in to prevent them from getting too much insulin at one time. And it's taking all of that information every 5 minutes and making a decision automatically about how much insulin to give, with the goal of trying to keep a blood sugar headed towards a certain target. Might be 100, might be 110, 120. It can do that throughout the day. And really what we find is that by this automatically making a decision every 5 minutes throughout the day, it really reduces kind of the roller coaster of diabetes. It reduces the highs and the lows. But the biggest thing that we hear from our families is really the daily burden of managing diabetes really is reduced. I call them mental gymnastics that they have to do to try and keep blood sugars in range. So, they don't have to spend so much time thinking about, well, what if this is going on? Or what if their blood sugar's dropping? The pump is automatically kind of taking care of that in the background. Pretty amazing stuff. So I did want to just give you a little visual of how the pump is working. So up here at the top, you'll kind of see in the green section, this is representing the glucose values. So it's showing a sensor reading every 5 minutes throughout the day. And you can see as it varies throughout the day, down below where you kind of see the little lollipops, those are indicating the insulin delivery. So up above, you'll see the sensor data. As it starts to drop, you'll see below that the insulin's responding to that automatically and will actually reduce or maybe even shut off insulin delivery to try and prevent that from happening. Now, does it prevent all those? No, but typically speaking, when we have people on automated insulin delivery systems, what we see is that lows don't go quite so low and they don't stay low as long. So it really, really has a big impact on both lows and highs. So over here on the right is actually an example of when the blood sugar is going high, it's starting to trend up. If the pump doesn't have enough active insulin on board, it's going to actually start to ramp up insulin delivery automatically in an attempt to prevent that blood sugar from going above 180, trying to keep it in target range. And there is even one pump on the market right now, Tandem, that will do an automatic correction even. This is a little bit more aggressive. It'll actually give an auto correction in an attempt to try and keep the sugar in. Now, now that we've kind of talked about the different devices, I really want to jump into some practical things for all of you in terms of managing kids on AID school. So we're going to go through some topics around low blood sugars, high blood sugars, and even exercise. I think those are probably the things that you guys deal with most frequently at school. So in terms of low blood sugars, you all are probably familiar with the rule of 15, where if we have a low blood sugar, we check with the meter, treat with 10 to 15 grams of carb, wait 15 minutes and recheck. Well, I really want you to kind of switch your thinking a little bit when it comes to automated insulin delivery systems, because these systems are actually looking 30 to 60 minutes in advance. And so what that means is that it is probably already shut off insulin delivery for quite some time before the low even happens. And so if we kind of fall back to our typical full 15-gram treatment, what's going to end up happening is it's going to cause a high blood sugar. So you actually typically need maybe half of what you would normally treat a low blood sugar. So you may only need 5 or 10 grams of carbohydrate to treat those lows. And if we do end up over treating, we really see it in the pump or in the glucose values, because what ends up happening is everything's so precisely dialed in with the pump. When you over treat the lows, it causes that super high rise and can definitely start that roller coaster of up and down. So the main thing that I want you to take away from this is be gentle with treating low blood sugars, and remember that the insulin delivery may have already been shut off for a half an hour. So keep that in mind when treating low blood sugars. Now, high blood sugars on a pump in general are very different than even for kids that are on injections. And, often we'll say a high blood sugar in and of itself isn't necessarily dangerous or harmful to the body. You can have high blood sugars for a few hours or even longer, and it's not going to cause any harm. But on a pump, when we see a high blood sugar, we are more concerned about the risk for ketones. And ketones are actually the more concerning component. Ketones are an indication of a couple of things possibly happening, either an illness or missed insulin. And on a pump, that's what we are concerned more about, is missed insulin. So with a high blood sugar, it's sometimes a little difficult to tell. How do I know when a high blood sugar is normal, or when is it a problem? And so kind of our rule of thumb in our clinic is if the blood sugar is above 300 and you don't know why, we want to check ketones. So if the blood sugar is over 300 and they just eaten 3 pieces of pizza and they didn't know quite how to bolus, that totally makes sense. That's probably not a concerning high blood sugar. Or, they had birthday cake and that's not typically something they do, and their blood sugar is high, or maybe they snuck some food. All of those make sense. But when it's that moment of, hey, their blood sugar is 398 at lunch today, and normally they're 110, that's when I want that red flag to go up for you, and I want you to have them check their ketones. And ketones are, as those start to build up in the body, it puts the child at risk for DKA. And DKA is really the more risky component of high blood sugars, right? So what does that mean? When the body doesn't have enough insulin in it, it has to find another energy source besides glucose. And it will actually start to break down fat for energy. That's why we have fat. We store our energy with fat. But when we break that down, ketones are the byproduct of that. And ketones are actually an acid in the body. So as that acid level starts to build up, it puts a person at risk for DKA. So when we see that high blood sugar, we don't know why it's occurring, let's go ahead and check ketones. And the way that we do that, you'll see there's a little picture on here that shows what a keto stick looks like. On the tip of that is kind of a little cotton pH device that they're just going to urinate directly on. So they can urinate on it, or they can pee into a cup and you dip. Either way, you want to read that reading within about 15 seconds, and you're going to measure it along the side of the bottle that tells you if they have ketones or not. So negative, kind of staying in the tan color, that's normal. And sometimes even trace ketones can be normal if we have been burning fat for other reasons, like we've gone a long time without eating. So if a child comes to school, maybe they ate dinner at 5 o'clock last night, come to school, they skipped breakfast, and now it's lunchtime, noon, and they have trace ketones, that could happen just because they've gone for a long time without eating. Or maybe they were really exercising hard. They've been playing sports. That could be another reason for some trace ketones. But anything above that needs to be an indicator to you that they are not getting insulin. And that would be the time that I would want you to reach out to parents and let them know that ketones are positive. Or if you can't get a hold of parents, go ahead and call the child's endocrinology office. So why do we worry so much more kind of about high blood sugars and ketones on a pump versus injections? Well, injections, we can see that the insulin has gotten low, but with pumps, it's different. So the little picture that I have on here is a picture of a kinked cannula after it's been pulled out of the skin. We have to remember, pumps only use rapid-acting insulin. So rapid-acting insulin, if that insulin gets interrupted for any reason, and it can happen for a multitude of reasons. Insulin delivery could be interrupted because the tubing didn't get put back on properly. The site's been pulled out and the child didn't realize it. They simply left their pump off when they showered in the morning. I can attest that happened to my son multiple times in middle school. Or it could be that the pumps run out of insulin or run out of battery, or just simply a pump malfunction. But whatever it is that stops that insulin delivery, rapid-acting insulin only lasts for about 4 hours in the body. So it puts kids at risk for actually developing ketones pretty rapidly. We can actually see moderate to large ketones in 4 to 6 hours after that insulin delivery has been stopped. So what happens when we are positive for ketones? That's when we're going to make sure we change out the pump set, likely give an injection. Those are some things to expect, and really increase the water intake because that's what's going to flush out. And if you remember nothing else from this today, getting insulin to the body is the key. That's what's going to stop the ketone making process. One thing to keep in mind too is that cannulas can get kinked at any time and we can't see it, but really the highest risk time is after a pump site change. So if you know that a child did a pump site change in the morning before they came to school and now the blood sugar is high, or if you actually had to do a pump site change at school, please make sure to check in and make sure that the blood sugar is doing okay 2 to 3 hours later, just to make sure, because that's when a lot of the movement happens when we pull the needle out. And we just want to make sure that that new pump site is working out. Okay, so there are 3 automated insulin delivery systems on the market today. There's Tandem Control IQ, and this is a tubed insulin pump that works with the Dexcom G6. And it actually is a tubed pump, but it also has a touch screen. So that's something that's kind of unique. And this is the one pump on the market right now that does auto correction. So when the blood sugar is high, it will not only ramp up the background insulin, but even give a little correction dose to bring that down. The Medtronic 770G is our other tube pump on the market. And it actually integrates with a different sensor, which is the Guardian Sensor 3. And this company actually just got approval for Medtronic 780G. And so they're actually kind of onto their next step in automated technology. And we may even be seeing this as soon as next year. So this may be a new product that you are working with kids on as of next year. And then Omnipod 5 is our only tubeless system on the market. So the pod itself that you can see right here, that's actually the pump itself, which attaches to the skin and also works with the Dexcom G6. So the final thing that I just wanted to give some tips about is physical activity, because physical activity on an automated insulin delivery system is quite different than anything else. And we know that exercise can cause hypoglycemia. So these systems actually have a feature built into them. Some of them call it activity feature or exercise feature. And what this does is it will actually target a slightly higher blood sugar while they're exercising. So instead of targeting 110 or 120, it's going to target a blood sugar of 140 or 150. And what this does is it allows the child to have more cushion before they would actually go low. And so that is a great feature to use if you're seeing that you have a child that is having hypoglycemia during gym class or during sports. This is something that I highly recommend. We do actually recommend turning this on up to an hour before exercise. And really all that does is it front loads them with less insulin and less likely to actually go low during the activity. Now Tandem does have something unique where if the child is having that, maybe the exercise feature isn't working well, you can actually set up a different exercise profile that allows them to get even less insulin. So just keep that in mind if you have somebody that's struggling with hypoglycemia during exercise. Another thing to kind of keep in mind is our rapid acting insulin peaks at 90 minutes. So if we can really avoid having that strong activity like physical activity during that peaking time, that's also going to reduce the likelihood of hypoglycemia. Now here, historically, on traditional pumps and with injections, we really utilize carbs as a way to kind of fuel the body before exercise to prevent low blood sugars. But it is very different on an automated insulin delivery system. And the reason for that is if we feed the child carbs before the activity and don't give any insulin for that, the pump is going to actually see the glucose rising and will actually ramp up insulin delivery. So it is absolutely counterproductive, and it is doing the exact opposite of what we want, which is putting extra insulin on board before they start their activity. So if you have a child that is historically giving snacks or has been giving snacks on an automated insulin delivery and they're struggling with lows, it's likely due to that. If they do need snacks, you probably want to do that right before the exercise or maybe even the activity so that the pump isn't recognizing that rise and actually ramping the insulin. And then finally, if you have somebody that's doing contact and you're worried about the pump being damaged, if they choose to remove the insulin pump, you want to make sure to have them suspend the insulin delivery. We want to make sure that the pump, especially with AID systems, doesn't recognize or think that it's been giving insulin into the body that actually wasn't given. Instead, it was given to the counter. So really make sure that you have them suspend. And really our rule of thumb is definitely suspend if they're going to be off for more than 30 minutes, but stopping even early or like right at the beginning of the activity is absolutely fine. So just to wrap up and just to kind of talk about some of the things, the tips and tricks that we went through today, really remember, be gentle. With these new systems, we don't need to be quite so aggressive about giving carbs and treating lows. So treating lows, be gentle. Giving snacks or snacks before exercise, we may be able to skip it totally, or if we do it right with the activity and be very gentle with that, the amount of carbohydrate. And giving carbs to raise blood sugars for any reason on these types of pumps is counterproductive if we are just giving the carbs without giving insulin, because the pump is going to ramp up insulin anyway. So it doesn't work out by just feeding, food to try and raise the blood sugar. The pump's going to kind of step in and actually try to lower that blood sugar. Something we didn't talk about yet, but I do think is really important to just briefly mention is pre-meal bolusing is incredibly important with these systems. If we have kids giving insulin after they eat with these systems, it actually can stack insulin and cause hypoglycemia. So what I would recommend is, even if you have a child that doesn't necessarily always eat all of their food, so you're not totally comfortable giving the full bolus, give at least some food bolus before they start eating. If you know they're going to eat 10 grams, put that in. And then in the back end, you can give a second bolus. But by not giving any insulin beforehand, the pump starts to ramp up insulin delivery. If we give that insulin later and actually include the carbs for it, the pump's already ramped up, and now we're also giving insulin for the food and the high blood sugar function. We can double or triple the amount of insulin and actually have a lot. So, good rule of thumb there. If they do late bolusing, maybe somebody has missed a bolus and it's been at least 30 minutes, don't put the carbs in at all. Just correct that high blood sugar. This is the safest way, because again, we don't know how much the pump has actually ramped up insulin delivery. And then again, we've mentioned stop insulin delivery if the pump is removed from the body, and really use that exercise feature because it's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over now to Karen for the next section of our process today.